This is why I need to listen to Mickie today.
I started, I think, close to 30 years ago. I had graduated with a creative writing degree focused on poetry. And of course, I was going to wait tables, and I did that for a summer after graduating. And I had done that for many years part-time, and then just realizing that, full-time, it's just hard. It's hard on your joints, your back, and your psyche. I just felt like I needed to transition to a safe office job. So I got hired at a telecom research startup, and I was employee number 3. And they're like, "Hey, you write. So you write press releases and send them out." And they introduced me to this expensive fax machine that held like 100 numbers. And of course, the media database that they had like 150 fax numbers. So it's like, so I had to program 100 numbers, hit send, take all day. There's always faxes that don't go through, and you get these error reports. And then I have to delete all of those numbers and then, put 50 more numbers in. So it was frustrating. And I was sending these out and nothing was happening. And I mentioned it to the owner, who was a telecom attorney. And he's like, "Yeah," he goes, "we do them, but they never do anything. Just keep at it." I was like, "Oh, no, I'm wasting a day and a half here. If we're going to do this, I want to see some, results." And so I kept looking at what we were sending out, which was a lot of data, and data is generally good with the media. But we weren't really talking about stories behind the data. And so I remember we had just published Caribbean telecom traffic tables between Caribbean countries, the United States, inbound, outbound traffic. And I noticed like one country, I can't remember the name of it, but it wasn't like a popular country that most people would recognize. It had way more traffic than anybody else. And so when I peeled back the layers and figured out why, it was because 1-900's numbers were routed through that country. And that was, interesting. And so I talked about that. 1-900 numbers, for a lot of people listening who don't know what those are, they were very popular in the early 90s. You could call a 1-900 number and you would be charged to your landline phone account, like say 75 cents a minute to have a pre-recorded call, whatever your horoscope is, or you could call and speak to a live psychic. Miss Cleo was popular at some point in the 80s, or no, that was the 90s. And that was like more expensive, like $3 or $4 a minute. And so you could talk to pet experts, you name it. There was also, of course, dating and all of that, romance and things along those lines. And so I wrote about that and put the data in there, but now we had the context of a story. And I was inspired by that because I noticed a trend that even really small articles tended to follow a story arc. And when you just publish data, there's no story there. And so that first release that I sent out, Reimagined, we got picked up in the Financial Times, The Economist, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and 3 telecom trade publications, as well as like Red Herring, which was popular at the time. And so I was like, whoa, this is different.